A scientist spent 17 years being bullied by birds. Not the same birds, they're kids. Here's what happened. In 2006, a wildlife researcher at the University of Washington put on a rubber caveman mask, walked outside, and trapped 7 crows. Standard field research. He tagged them, let them go, moved on with his life. The crows did not move on with their lives. Within 2 years, 47 crows on that campus were dive bombing anyone wearing the mask. Crows that weren't there in 2006. Crows that had never been touched, never been trapped, never met the man. They just knew. We're going to get into exactly how that works, what's actually happening in their brains when they do it, and I promise this is real. The part where Aesop turns out to have been right about crows 2,000 years before anyone thought to check. Okay, quick thing before we go further, because this matters. Crows are not pigeons. I know they're both just kind of around. I know they're both city birds that eat things they probably shouldn't, but they are not in the same league cognitively, and I need you to understand that before we continue. Corvids, the family that includes crows, ravens, jays, and magpies, have a brain-to-body ratio that rivals primates. And in 2016, researchers found that bird brains pack roughly twice as many neurons as a mammal brain of the same mass. Twice. The crow's brain is about the size of your thumb. It is, by neuron density, punching well above its weight. They use tools. They plan for the future, like actually plan, not in a vague animal instinct way, but in a, I will need this specific thing tomorrow, so I am going to hide it now way. They recognize themselves in mirrors. They solve multi-step puzzles. They understand cause and effect. And apparently, as we've established, they hold grudges, right? So, Professor John Marzluff, wildlife scientist, University of Washington. Legitimate researcher, published academic, person who has clearly thought very carefully about what he does for a living. In 2006, he puts on a caveman mask and goes outside to trap some crows. He traps 7 crows, tags them with leg rings, releases them. Standard, documented, fine. Then, and this is the part where it becomes a different kind of story. He keeps wearing the mask, just walking around campus, feeding crows, being a man in a mask, going about his day. The 7 crows he'd caught recognized him immediately. Loud alarm calls, dive bombing, the whole theatrical performance of a bird that is genuinely annoyed at you. Expected. He trapped them. They remember. That bit makes sense. What happened next was not expected. The number of crows scolding him went up, not down, up. Crows that had never seen the trapping were joining in. Within a couple of years, 47 out of 53 crows he passed on campus would scold him on sight. He hadn't touched those birds. He hadn't looked at those birds. Somewhere between 2006 and the years that followed, the information had moved. Parent to chick, crow to crow. See this face? This one's dangerous. Pass it on. The researchers tested this directly. They observed fledglings, young crows still in the nest, who had never seen the original trapping. If those fledglings had seen their parents scold the mask, they started scolding it too, even when their parents weren't around. Cultural transmission, in birds, about a specific human face passed through generations, like a warning that someone decided was worth keeping. Now, to confirm the crows were recognizing the specific face, and not just mask in general, Marzluff also had people walk around in a neutral mask. The neutral mask was modeled on the face of Dick Cheney, who was vice president at the time. The crows ignored it entirely. Dick Cheney, officially cleared by the crows of the University of Washington. The caveman, active threat for the next decade. At this point, the reasonable question is, what is actually happening inside the crow when it sees that mask? Is it fear? Pattern recognition? Something more complicated? So the researchers did what scientists do when they want an answer, which is scan the brains. In a follow-up study, crows were captured by researchers wearing a threatening mask, then kept for 4 weeks and fed by people in a different, caring mask. After that, the researchers injected a glucose tracer into the crows while they were fully alert and conscious, showed them both masks, and took brain scans to see which regions activated. When the crows saw the threatening mask, the regions that lit up were structurally analogous to the human amygdala, which is the part of our brain where fear memories live. Not the same architecture, not the same building at all, really, but the same function, arrived at completely independently through a totally different evolutionary route. And then here's the part that genuinely surprised the researchers. After 4 weeks of being fed by the caring mass, the crows showed activity in regions associated with social bonding in mammals. They had updated their assessment. The caring mask person had been reclassified, apparently as fine. So crows do not just hold grudges. They also decide on their own terms when those grudges are over. They assess, they update, they move on when the evidence supports it, which honestly is a more considered approach to conflict resolution than a lot of species manage, present company potentially included. Here's where it gets a bit more complicated, because the grudge thing makes crows sound purely adversarial, and that is not quite the full picture. There are dozens of documented cases of crows leaving objects for the people who feed them. Buttons, coins, a lost earring, bits of shiny nothing that the crow apparently decided you would appreciate having. One of the most documented examples is a girl named Gabby Mann from Seattle who started putting food out for crows in her garden when she was 8 years old. Over the following years, the crows began leaving things at the feeding spot in return. Lego pieces, glass beads, a small rusted screw, a miniature silver ball. She kept them in a labeled collection. By the time the story got written up, she had over 100 items. Now, and I want to be straightforward about this because the honest version is actually more interesting. Scientists are not fully certain this is intentional gift giving. It might be. Or it might be curious crows dropping objects they happen to be carrying when they arrived for food. The behavior is documented and real. The motivation is still being worked out. What researchers are fairly confident about is that it only happens with humans the crows have an established relationship with. Strangers do not get buttons. You have to earn the buttons. There is apparently a vetting process. And look, if you are the kind of person who is still here, 7 minutes into a video about crow social cognition, genuinely invested in whether a bird left a bottle cap on purpose, that is honestly wild. And also this channel is called Honestly Wild for a reason, so you should probably just subscribe. The crows would respect the commitment. Here's the thing I keep coming back to. By 2013, the number of crows scolding the caveman mask on the University of Washington campus had reached its peak, and then, slowly, it started to fall. Year by year, fewer crows were scolding. The population was turning over. The ones who remembered were dying. The ones who had only heard about it secondhand were dying too. By September 2023, 17 years after Marzluff first put on that mask, he walked the campus in it and heard nothing. Not a single alarm call. Not one crow made a sound. The crows that were there in 2006 are long dead. 17 years passed between birds, about one man's face in a mask, and then it was gone. There is something that stays with me about all of this, not the intelligence. We can more or less explain that, not even the grudges, really. It is the fact that an animal with no language, no writing, no shared history beyond just watching each other, managed to keep a specific piece of social knowledge alive for 17 years. Passed between generations, about one face, just by paying attention. Anyway, crows. If this is your kind of thing, the subscribe button is right there, and we will be back next week with something just as strange, which I realize sounds like a big promise. But honestly, on this channel, it really is not that hard to keep. Honestly wild. Take care.